Welcome to Mind Matters, and thank you for joining Dan Ploger and myself, John Krotek. This podcast is where we discuss the critical social, economic, and spiritual issues that affect all of us. We, the people, are in a battle against the forces of entropy, forces that are hell-bent on gaining power for personal reasons, forces hell-bent on destroying the concepts of freedom and individual thought, forces which don't benefit the social order. Thank you again. Hey, Dan.
Hey,
Your buddy here, John, in the Shenandoah Valley. Life is good. How are you doing in Florida?
good. Is the snow melted yet?
Funny you should ask that. It was just 3 weeks ago that we had snow on a Monday and we had 80s on a Friday. So I don't know who's in charge of the weather up here, but boy, have they got some things mismatched. But it's actually beautiful. This is a picture of the Shenandoah Valley behind me. And I can think of no place I'd rather be right now than on the phone with you in the beautiful mountains of the Shenandoah Valley of Virginia.
Well, it's nice you're getting a change in the weather, and I wish we'd see a change in politics the same way.
Oh my gosh, yes.
But we were talking about Whoopi Goldberg, and we were talking about the leadership by division, and I asked the question, what does Whoopi Goldberg stand for? I can look at President Biden and say, well, President Biden stands for a socialistic top-down management system of the government and equality of outcome. And so at least I can say he stands for something. And so what in your mind what comes to mind when you think of Whoopi Goldberg?
That's a great question, because you can't judge a book by its cover, but we're known by many times our actions for sure, but the words that we say. So on face, looking at what some of the things that she has said recently, by the way, I loved her in some of her movies. She was phenomenal in Ghost and Sisterhood or whatever, Sister Act. And she was a great actress in those films. But lately, some things have changed. And I have to say, looking at Whoopi now and listening to her rhetoric, her divisive rhetoric, I'd say she stands for division, which is anti-American. But she also stands for excess. She identifies as celebrity, elitism. And most of the things that comes out of Whoopi's mouth in the last few years, they just resonate with somebody that lacks humility and gratitude. And so I'd say that Whoopi has taken a complete 180-degree turn from being a phenomenal actress in some of those films to somebody that's a really poor role model. So to me, Whoopi Goldberg stands for everything that I don't stand for, which is, collaboration and humility and things that make people great. She lacks those. Without passing judgment, I wish her the best. I don't know if that answers your question, but that's kind of how I feel.
Well, I guess I'm not surprised at your answer because except that, and thanks for clarifying a little bit to me. I think, first of all, Whoopi's not funny anymore.
No, she's not.
So that's a shame. Second of all, she's like so many others, personas in the news have taken on the role of a victim. And victimhood is the popular thing to be these days. I mean, everybody's got, disabled license plates. Everybody's got a problem that somehow it can be traced to the president of the United States. and you are rewarded by virtue of how much you can complain about it or how well you can make your case that you're a victim, and it has little to do with the reality of the situation.
No, that's a good point. And Whoopi no longer thinks for herself. She has taken on a narrative, what I consider the narrative of the group thinkers. And anytime we can create, or anytime we can support a narrative that creates division, we play right into their hands. So I'd have to say that you're right, Dan. She's not funny anymore, but she doesn't think for herself anymore. She's put herself in a position to where she thinks the world revolves around her. It's quite evident. And when we lack humility, it's hard to really see the forest through the trees because we just believe in our stardom and in our celebrityship. And it really warps our view of the world. And isn't she on a show called The View?
Yes.
Well, whatever their view is, it's certainly not individual thought or critical thinking or common sense. It's some kind of warped view of some type of elitist attitude that's just freaking ridiculous.
It's a collective attitude, and it's an assault on the individual. But this points out the contrast in their philosophy is they're anti-individual, yet they want to separate victims and separate races into groups.
Yes, and then you see what's going on right now, and there's an interesting book that was written in 1958 by a guy by the name of Manning Johnson. And Manning Johnson was a member of the American Communist Party for about a decade. And he was trained in communist and socialist ideology. And he wrote that book, Color, Communism, and Common Sense, in 1958, which exposed what the socialist, communist, global agenda was and how it was going to play on race and racism and victimology to accomplish its goals, right? And so, interestingly enough, in 1959, Manning was killed in an automobile accident, a single car automobile, and he died in the accident, and of all places in California. So, that's a whole different story. But, it's a very short book, but if you read what Manning wrote, it makes so much sense into what we're seeing right now, especially in America and really across the globe, this mantra or battle cry of racism and in this, diversity and inclusion and what it really means for those who are perpetrating these narratives behind the scenes. Again, Whoopi Goldberg has fallen into that victimology narrative, which is basically a communist outcry. It's as simple as that. And if you take time to read the book, you'll know exactly where Manning was coming from and what part Whoopi Goldberg plays in that.
Yeah. It's a shame that an ideology that has never in the history of man, never been successful. It has always ended in tyranny, bloodshed, and utter failure. And yet people like Karl Marx, a white man, let's not forget that.
No.
This is some sort of philosopher that had this idea that had appeal to some people, but unfortunately it doesn't work because people are not collective. People are individuals, and every person is an individual and has their own life and their own soul, and they are responsible to themselves and to a higher authority, whether not necessarily a God. If you don't believe in God, it doesn't matter. The higher authority might be truth, might be morals, recognition there is a path forward of least evil, if you will, but to perpetuate or to try and initiate something that has utterly failed by the lives of millions, not to count the suffering of the people in the gulags that did survive and the Auschwitzes and that. It's incredible that anybody could even try that. So it's a blatant attempt to brainwash, let's not say influence people who will be their subjects. And the important thing is the word is subjects, because it's a naked quest for power. And they've shown it. They've done it, and through the utter failure of this whole, not only the socialist movement worldwide, but the utter failure of individuals that try to perpetuate this stuff.
No, I couldn't agree with you more. And again, history repeats itself. You laid that out, and it has never worked. And leadership, and we've talked about leadership, you and I, time and time again, and leadership that brings diverse groups together for a common purpose is what true leadership and authentic leadership and positive leadership is all about. But those people who are anti-collaboration and I can't even use leader in the same sentence, because they're not leaders. They're something different. Rebel rousers with a hard edge, and they really don't care about individuals. They only care about power and control, which is what tyranny is all about. And unfortunately, Whoopi Goldberg, who is not funny anymore, has fallen right into the bosom of those that perpetuate terror and fear, and they want to take away freedoms. Whoopi's part of that movement now. And like I say, I wish her the best. She will fail, because the individuals will always usurp the collective. I always believe that.
Yeah.
So
I wish there was a term for what we were describing. There are two types of leaders, one of which I would subscribe to, which a true leader is one who takes a group of subjects, if you will, of diverse interests and objectives, and unifies those people into a common objective. Mm-hmm. Leadership by division is not leadership. It's the antithesis of leadership. I don't know why we don't have a word for that, but it ought to be something we use every day, which is a person who leads to divide. And this is not a good force. This is not only that, it's easy. It's a lazy type of leadership. Think of how difficult it is to unify your group, your employees, whatever the case may be, your work group, to unify. Think how hard that is. Think how easy it is to divide your work group into two different sections, how to put one against the other, how to tear down things. It's so easy to tear down a statue. Think of let's just think of speaking of entropy, how much entropy there is, how much time was spent to build that statue. It took a number of politicians and people who had influence and maybe influence over the spending of money to put together the idea, then to sell the idea. Then they had to hire artists to create this. This is a good outlet for artists. And then they had to use manufacturers to smelt and to dig up, smelt, and create the bronze that was necessary. Then somebody had to build a foundation for that, not one person, a group of people. And then they had to erect that with a crane. And here comes some slack-mouthed, screaming liberal with a rope and pulls on it and knocks the thing over. I mean, look at the entropy. There's the unbalance in that whole situation. And which is easier? Which was easier to do? To put a rope around that thing and pull it down, or to go through all the trouble that people decided was necessary to put that statue up?
Yeah, The
We aren't
answer is,
we
yeah,
aren't talking about what the statue represents. That's a whole nother subject.
the answer is pretty self-evident. When you have people that feed off the fear and the racial biases and the victimology of their personalities, when you have people that sensationalism and ratings, when you have people that feed off of that, the misery of others, like you say, pulling down a statue. I mean, whoever the statue is, I mean, those they are the entropic leaders, that solid, authentic leaders who actually care about leaving a lasting legacy for humanity. They're the antithesis, your antithesis of that, which you said earlier. And they do, the only value they have to me is a testimony of how not to be. And so if you look at Shakespeare, To Be or Not to Be, if I was given a choice to be Whoopi Goldberg, I would choose not to be. So I love right where I'm at, right here in the Shenandoah, right here with you, my good friend Dan Plover. And I'd rather be like this than like them. And whatever view they have of the world is not like the beautiful world behind me. It's of some warped world where power and tyranny and misery proliferate and flourishes. And I'd like to see it in a different way. So thanks for that question, man.
You're welcome. And well said, John. Great talking to you.
Yes, sir. Thank you for joining us on another episode of Mind Matters. Use your critical thinking. Use logic and reason. Make your own determinations on the critical issues. Stay alert. Stay alive.